Hello, New York Giants fans. Welcome back to the Everything New York Giants podcast with New York Giants fangirl. I'm your host, Adrianna, and we are in the height of the offseason right now, but we do have some things to talk about, starting with Hard Knocks. We have seen the first episode, so I'm going to recap and talk through some of the highlights of that, and then also a couple other things. There's been a video about Malik Nabers, Tyrod Taylor's out here talking some stuff, so we're just going to run through some fun offseason stuff, and then we'll talk about training camp too, which is coming up very soon. So let's get into it. Let's start quickly with the Malik Nabers video and the Tyrod Taylor comments because they are something. So for those of you who don't know, Giants wide receiver number 6 overall pick in the 2024 draft was seen at a strip club over the weekend throwing money around. He was not drinking, he was not doing drugs, he was not doing anything illegal, he is not married, he was not cheating on his wife. So all of that being said, I'm not worried about it. I understand why some people are concerned. I think the majority feel like it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, he was not doing anything illegal, but we know the New York media is going to make a big deal out of it. And I've already seen people saying, oh, well, the Chargers offensive tackle, Joe Alt, is not out doing stuff like that. I'm glad that we picked him over Malik Nabers and blah, blah, blah. And all I have to say to that is no one fucking cares. So have fun with that. I think it's fine. You guys know that Romo Dunze was my number one guy. I wanted him over Nabers, and that's because of some of the things that Nabers said prior to the draft. And also he was charged with possession of an illegal firearm, but then the charges ended up being dropped, and that was a couple of years ago. He was either 18 or 19. So it seems like since he's been with the Giants, everything has been fine until this. To be honest, like I said, I'm just really not that worried about it. I just want him to prove me wrong in my concerns that I had, and, I just want him to be smart on and off the field. So I assume that he's going to get a nice stern talking to. I heard that some people in the Giants building had seen it, and, we're not that thrilled about it. I think mainly because, he has to think about the optics now of being in New York and being a receiver and all of those things. And I'm sure he just wasn't thinking of that. So I am sure he's going to get a nice stern talking to, and that will be the end that we hear of Malik Nabers' things off the field. I hope. Now, let's talk about Tyrod, because I didn't actually know about this until Tay told me about it, which I thought was hilarious. Apparently, Tyrod was asked about what it's like being with the Jets or whatever, and he said that it was a breath of fresh air. And to that, I have to say, Tyrod, it's going to be a breath of fresh air for you when you find out how horribly run the Jets organization is, that Aaron Rodgers can do whatever the fuck he wants and no one tells him any different, and Robert Saleh is a terrible head coach, so best of luck. I always liked Tyrod. I still like Tyrod. And he said something like, there's no disrespect to the Giants, but I'm just like, when you have to put that in first, like you're just trying to nicely make a jab, and we could have just done without that, because a jab is still a jab. You know what I mean? So anyway, whatever. Have fun losing with the Jets. I think he's just happy he's finally going to get playing time, because we know Aaron Rodgers is going to get injured again. So it is what it is. Let's talk about Hard Knocks now, because the first episode came out last Tuesday, the initial episode, and now I'm recording this Monday, so Tuesday, tomorrow night, there will be another episode. There's 4 more episodes. They go until the end of July, and I have to be honest, I'm really loving it so far. I mean, I think that we've learned some new things and some things that aren't necessarily new, but what I just feel is so different and so special about it is we get this behind-the-scenes look of what actually goes on in the Giants building during the offseason. And until now, there's always been whispers and sources this and all kinds of stories that, but there's never really been an inside look into things that happen. So I think it's been really cool to watch so far, and I'm excited to see how it continues on over the next few weeks. So before I go into some of the highlights, I do want to remind people, in case you don't know this, the Giants had final say on what gets aired. So obviously they're only going to air things that make them look good. So I know I've seen concerns from people being like, oh, well, are we going to get the full Saquon true story and blah, blah, blah. We're going to get it from the Giants' perspective. So we've already had Saquon's perspective. Now we're going to get the Giants, and you can take from it what you will and form your own opinions. But I think we all know the only reason John Mara agreed to end up doing Hard Knocks, aside from the fact that it's the offseason and aside from the fact that it's good marketing from them, they get final say. So whatever they want to see is what's getting aired. So no surprise there, I don't think. Something else that I thought was hilarious was the amount that Joe Shane talks about how much he loves peanut butter and jellies. And as a PB&J stan myself, we love to see it. The other thing that Joe said, and he said this a couple times throughout the episode, I was just reminded, and we all know this, but to see him say things like this, he is the polar opposite of Dave Gettleman in every way, shape, and form, and I really love that for him, for everyone in the office, and for us as fans, because I just feel like we're getting someone who actually is putting the good of the franchise above him and anyone else. And he said repeatedly, I'm focused on doing what's best for the franchise. He talked about it with the Saquon Barkley thing. He talked about it here and there, and I just felt like he actually cares about what's best for the franchise at whether or not, he gets fired. He mentioned something about like, well, if I get fired, I still need to do right by the organization prior to that. So I appreciate that. Now, let's talk about Saquon. So obviously there were a lot of conversations about it in the first episode. I think it's going to trickle for a little while. I'm sure we're going to finally get to see what ends up happening. We saw that snippet of the phone call of him saying to Saquon, I think the right thing to do is let you test the market. So I thought that was interesting, and I'm excited to see what finally happens. But some things that I thought were particularly interesting about the conversations that we saw from the episode were this. Joe said he lost years off of his life from the deal the prior offseason. And we had heard about this from different sources inside the building saying that, things were really not good with the Giants front office and Saquon's agent at the time from Rock Nation. Now, prior to the 2023 season, he got a new agent. So, Joe said at one point that he doesn't want that past history to affect negotiating with Saquon coming up now, but he is a little hesitant because of how badly it went last time. So I would love to get more insight on that, but I think that's all we're going to get. He also said that he didn't want to offend Saquon by only offering him $7 million a year, but we got the sense that that's really all that Joe felt that Saquon was worth. So, I also thought it was funny that he put disrespect in quotes. He didn't want to disrespect Saquon by only offering him $7 million a year. Something else that deeply, deeply needs to be talked about is this narrative that people have that John Mara runs the show and tells everyone what to do. And I think when Dave Gettleman was here, that was partially the case. From everything that I've heard about Dave Gettleman, it sounds like he's extremely arrogant and he was always right. But I think the reason why John Mara brought him back was because Gettleman would ultimately be a bit of a yes man for Gettleman, where Joe Shane is like, no, it's my show, I run it, and like I said, I'm doing right by the franchise, which is in turn doing right by you, and that includes not overpaying a 27-year-old running back. So if it was up to John Mara, we all saw this in the episode, and I hope that everyone, even if you didn't get to watch it, now you know, John Mara is not calling all the shots. He is not doing final say on draft, final say on free agent signings. Joe is doing it. There was a great conversation. Well, I don't know if it's great, but there's a conversation shown between the two of them where John Mara literally says the following. He talks about saying, well, I think we should bring Saquon back. Basically, he wants him back. And he also says that, where's my note here? Oh, he also says that maybe they should draft one. It's going to force the Giants into drafting a running back high if they get rid of Saquon. And then Joe says, no, we also have free agency. We can go after one then. This is why Joe is running the show. Do you see what I'm saying? So anyway, I think from the get-go, though, that was important, is that Joe did not want to pay that much money for a running back. He just didn't want to do it. He didn't feel like it was worth it for Saquon. He didn't feel like other teams were going to pay him that much money. And he also knew that Saquon had more wear and tear than some of the other guys in his age group. One of them being Devin Singletary, which he spoke very highly about. Obviously, we know the Giants ended up signing Singletary. But something that I thought was interesting is that they all underestimated the running back market because there was so much competition. No one expected Saquon to get as much money as he did. And that includes, I think, all of us as fans. I know there are some fans out there who are like, Saquon deserves it and he should get paid $15 million per year. Those are the delusional people, okay? Some of us are a little more rational, and we knew that even if Saquon got paid $15 million a year, it wasn't worth $15 million a year. The reason he got it is because the Eagles are in good shape roster-wise on offense, defense, and special teams. So they could afford to overpay a 27-year-old running back. The Giants cannot afford to do that. And like Joe Schoen said, we are paying our quarterback $40 million a year. I'm not paying him $40 million a year to hand the ball off to $12 million a year Saquon Barkley. That's not why he's getting paid $40 million. So the last thing on Saquon was he also talked about the franchise tag, and he felt like he didn't want to get stuck paying Saquon $12 million a year if there was no trade market for him. And he felt like there wasn't going to be a trade market for him because there were so many other running backs available in free agency, which again, I think a lot of us felt that. I think we felt like maybe if they traded him during the season before his injury, ideally, then they could have gotten something for him. But in the offseason now, when you've got 10 other running backs and guys like Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders and blah, 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 whoever else is still available, they felt like, well, how are we going to trade Saquon when he's coming off a down year, he's coming off an injury, and, you know, there's all these other backs available who are going to get paid a lot less money. So I was with him on all of that. You guys know that I was not out here saying we should pay Saquon $12 million a year. I think it was 100% the right move. Let's talk about Brian Burns, because this is a very great clip and area that I felt like we never would have seen this if it wasn't for Hard Knocks. So it starts by Joe is at the combine and he is talking to Dan Morgan, who is with the Panthers, and Dave Canales, two guys that he had a great relationship with Dan Morgan, he said, and he got to know Dave Canales during the combine. And it started with Morgan saying to him, how about 2 1s for Brian Burns? So what I also think is really interesting is it started with 2 1s, and the Giants ended up getting Burns for a 2nd and a 5th rounder. Started with 2 first-round picks, ended with a 2nd and a 5th. Amazing. Dave Gettleman could never. So I thought that was great. I also thought it was interesting, and it was nice to see those good relationships that Joe Schoen has, which we know, again, that Dave Gettleman didn't have those types of relationships. And it's why, one reason why things went the way they did. Now let's talk about Shane Bowen. Something that I also thought was hysterical, and I don't know if this was for the cameras or not. Part of me seemed like it was a little contrived, but part of me was like, maybe this is just how Daves and Shane are. They know each other so well. This is the type of conversations that they have. Daves pulls Shane into a room and says to him, I'm going to offer the job to Shane. And Shane says, Bowen? And he says, yeah. He said, I'm just going to call him and say, like, the job is yours. Do you want it? Like that casually, which I thought was hysterical, because I was like, this is probably exactly how Dable is when he's having these types of conversations with people. So when he's having this conversation with Joe Schoen, he talks a lot about the different stats and the categories that Shane Bowen's defense was really high in when he was with the Titans, one of them being the run defense. And Dable specifically says something like, he was so good on run defense, I would love to see him do that to our team. Like, if he could bring our run defense into the top 10, I would fucking love it. And he specifically drops the F-bomb there. So I thought that was great. Something else was interesting is we get to see Shane Bowen in a meeting with Dable, Shane, and a bunch of other Giants front office members. So he was asked by Dable. Dable asked Bowen what he specifically thought of Isaiah Simmons. Now, this is obviously before they ended up signing Simmons back in February. And he said that his expectation for Simmons is that they want him to be a 1st and 2nd down nickel, and then on 3rd down they want him to play money. So I like that Bowen really has a clear idea and concept and plan for what he wants Simmons to do, because I know a lot of us love Simmons and felt like maybe he just wasn't used correctly with the Giants. So I'm excited to see what Bowen is going to do with him. On that note, Bowen also specifically talks about having 4 good elite pass rushers up front, and that's what I think the main core plan for this defense is going to be. It's going to be a 4-3 with the 4 big guys up front. Now, again, this looks like it was prior to the Brian Burns trade. I think this was all still in February. So with that being said, this was before they traded for Brian Burns. So when they're talking about the 4 elite rushers, obviously, we know we have Kayvon and we know we have Aziz, so we have those 2. But when you're talking about the other 2, they bring up Boogie Basham and Ryder Anderson. Both a little questionable for my liking. Now we have Brian Burns, so now we have 3 out of 4. So The fourth, it sounds like it's going to be one of those guys. I have literally zero expectations for Ryder Anderson. He has not done a lot since he's been on this team. He's been more injured than he's done anything else. But if they think that he's capable of being that, let's see it. I would like to see that. Let's get something out of him. Maybe they can get something out of Aaron Robinson for all we know. But I just thought that was interesting, and I think we're going to see more out of those meetings with Bowen here, and just got me excited to watch this defense. Speaking of the defense, one other thing that was brought up was when they were talking about free agents, again, before the whole Burns thing, they talked about Chris Jones and Christian Wilkins. And Chris Jones obviously would have been amazing, but I think they all knew that financially that was not going to happen, especially this offseason. And Joe Shane said that Dexter Lawrence actually texted him saying, you know, Wilkins and I are good buddies. What do you think about bringing him in? And all I have to say is, oh my God, that would have been amazing. When Wilkins was a free agent for a little bit, or we thought he was going to be a free agent, I was like, oh my God, he has to come to the Giants. Would have been epic. Could you imagine a mic'd up Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins? TV royalty, let me tell you. So that was a little disappointing, but I love that they threw it around, and if we had the money, it would have been great. Something else I wanted to touch on briefly is, again, back in February, when Shane is talking to Mara about the offense and talking about the fact that, you know, he's not willing to pay Saquon that amount of money, and he starts rattling off the other tight ends and the wide receivers that are going to be on the team. He specifically mentions Darren Waller. So they really thought, at least in February, I'm sure even until March at that point, that Waller was coming back. So they had a plan, thought he was going to come back, going to be a big part of this offense. So I guess that's a little bit disappointing. Last two things here, let's talk about Jones. So they show him a little bit doing his rehab again. It wasn't really much, but I just thought it was interesting that we got to see a little behind the scenes of Jones. You know, we don't see anything from him ever, so I just thought that was interesting. And I'm curious to see how much more of him we will actually see. I want to see him like Office style, sitting down one-on-one with the camera and like joking around. I don't think we're going to get that, but I would like to see it. So Shane, obviously we talked about it. He said he's paying him $40 million a year. He's not paying him $40 million to hand it off to a $12 million running back. It's Jones' year. They're going to get him protection. He said even Patrick Mahomes couldn't win games behind that offensive line. And he's talked about this a lot. The fact that the four best offensive players played less than 60 snaps together. So like, what do you expect? So I am glad that his big focus was protection this offseason. We all knew that needed to be done. They brought in a slew of veteran offensive linemen, and, you know, we'll see how that works out. But Joe said, you know, I'm not giving up on Jones. He still has 3 years left on his deal. So he said that at one point, and then he also said, like, this year is basically, he didn't use this verbatim, basically do or die for Jones. Like, we're paying him $40 million a year. We got him veteran offensive linemen. Like, it's now or never. So curious to see how that goes down. Last thing on Hard Knocks, because this was a big conversation afterwards too, is Tim McDonald, who is the director of player personnel, said, what's our identity on offense without Saquon? And I know that this was a big concern for a lot of fans too after he signed with the Eagles. Like, what are we going to do without Saquon? What did we do with Saquon? A whole lot of nothing. The only thing we did with Saquon was lose a lot of games. So I just am not that worried about it. Like, you can't center your entire offense around someone who is injured all the time. So we brought in another running back. We drafted a running back. We brought in another wide receiver. We have like 18 wide receivers. We re-signed Lawrence Cager. So, which, listen, I know it's not that exciting, but they are bringing in depth on the offense across the board, and that's what we need. So we'll see in a couple months how it all ends up going. So with that being said, let's briefly touch on training camp. I'm going to pull the dates up for you guys. So this Thursday at 2 p.m. is when tickets go live. It is free to attend, but you have to reserve a ticket in advance, and they do sell out quickly. So if you want to go, mark your calendars. Tickets are on sale this Thursday, July 11th at 2 p.m. Training camp starts Wednesday, July 24th. The practices are all at 10 a.m. It's Wednesday, July 24th, Thursday, July 25th, Friday, July 26th, Sunday, July 28th, Monday, July 29th, Tuesday, July 30th, Wednesday the 31st, they are off. And then Thursday, August 1st, Friday, August 2nd, and then Sunday, August 4th, Monday, August 5th, Tuesday, August 6th. The one thing I want to note, those last two practices, the Monday, August 5th, Tuesday, August 6th, those are joint practices with the Lions, which we have not been able, as fans and the public, we have not been able to watch joint practices. So I think this is going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. I can't wait to see Dan Campbell back in the building. He was drafted by the Giants many years ago. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be great and it's going to be fun, especially towards the end of camp, when throughout camp there's going to be all these question marks and, you know, exclamations of who did well and who didn't do well and who's going to make the roster and well, this person only played well because they're going against the same defense every day and blah, 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 blah. Those last 2 days, going to be a little bit of a change before the preseason game. So it's going to be an opportunity to see how the offense and defense, obviously they're not hitting, but we'll get a little snippet of what they look like going against a different offense and a different defense for 2 whole days before the preseason game starts. So that's it for now. I will be back later this week. We'll recap Hard Knocks episode number 2. I'll remind you guys about training camp tickets, and then training camp is here and we're going to have a lot to talk about all the time. So make sure you subscribe to this channel. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at New York Giants Fangirl. I post on stories all the time, pretty active on there. So if you guys want more information, more New York Giants stuff, make sure you check out my page there and like this video, and then you'll get to see new ones in the future.